Tamron, you're so beautifully dressed today. You have to do the intro.
Why, thank you. I am wearing a very special African print because here in South Africa it is Heritage Day weekend, and I am an absolute fanatic for all things African and beautiful. And when it's this weekend, I get all kinds of people texting me saying, please can we borrow something, because it's a tradition to dress up here. So I'm handing out big gold necklaces or even saris because I have a few of those. So my normal wardrobe fits in perfectly on Heritage Day weekend.
So over here in Canada, I think I'm wearing the same shirt I've been wearing for the last 3 shows. And it's not a coincidence. I just basically wear it every day.
It's a beautiful shirt. The first time I saw that shirt, it's also,
it's so good.
Out to me this magical head wrap. It's wonderful. Yay for pretty things.
So, I'm Tarzan K, and I'm learning about all things crypto from you, Tamron. But one thing, and you got to introduce yourself in a sec, but one thing that I don't need to be schooled about is security hygiene, because I am hardcore about it. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts so you can make me more hardcore, because I'm in.
Well, that's great. So we can share both our knowledge and experience on this, because it came up in our last episode, and there's a couple of things that I take for granted that I realize are sometimes a surprise for people. So let's jump straight into that. In the last episode, we were talking around the frustrating thing around having limits on exchanges, and I painted a hypothetical scenario if somebody got hold of your passwords and maybe wanted to transfer your money somewhere, and the idea of making sure that your passwords don't get stolen by somebody is really, really important. But here's the thing. It's not just about where you keep your passwords that's important, because the likelihood of that sort of movie scene where somebody like gets into your computer and is actually very, very small possibility. The much scarier likelihood is of somebody tricking you into giving your details to them, which is called phishing. So I want to talk about that too. So let's start off with talking about password managers, and that's a little bit about you not forgetting your stuff. But I want to more importantly talk about security protocols of using anything on the internet, like paying attention to the address. So tell me, you mentioned password managers for. Let's start there, and then we'll jump into
let's talk about that phishing thing. Yeah, because it was only a couple of weeks ago there was a phishing scheme with people who downloaded Ola on Blocker, a Chrome extension. There was. Did you hear about that? Anyway, it was like if you downloaded Ola on Blocker, which is a Chrome extension that I have, within like a 20-minute window, it got fixed really quick, but that extension gets tons of downloads. Then you would have got an email. And if you didn't have those protocols in place that you're about to talk about, you would have given away your passwords. Anyway.
Yes.
So let's get to that. But password managers, I feel like as a business owner, I have so many passwords, like literally hundreds. And what most people do in that scenario is they make their password like middle name 1. And then there's another version of it with a capital. And there's another version of it with like an ampersand or whatever. So that's what I used to do. Like that was my method until I became a business owner and was like, okay, I have to be more responsible about this. So I started off with LastPass. And when I was ready to upgrade to paid, I actually started using 1Password, which I like better. It's just, I like pretty software. 1Password is beautiful. LastPass is like red and black. I don't like that. So I use 1Password, and I have an account for my husband. I have an account for my assistant, and also there's extra accounts. So if someone, let's say my Facebook ads manager is like, can you share your ads password? I'll be like, yes, here's like open a 1Password account and I'll share it through there.
Okay, great.
So, and that was totally revolutionized so many things, because it also stores my credit cards, bank accounts, secure documents, with crypto, like I have a lot of different accounts, like for a lot of different exchanges and different, even for Cold Wallet. I have, anyway, there's just passwords galore. So I
Yes.
also have started tagging so that I can just like quickly pull up like 20 crypto passwords. It also reminds me where my accounts are. Anyway, there's so
Yes.
many uses for it. When people don't have a password manager, I'm like, you're insane. I had a client pay on the phone the other day, and she got out her credit card and started reading. She was like doing this, like look, type. I was like, what? How do people still do this? Like that's
using their actual physical card. Yeah. So you brought
Yes.
up a couple of important things. So the first one is a password manager is a secure place where your passwords are saved, which is only as safe as the password on your password manager. So if somebody gets access to the password on your password manager, which might be any of the ones you mentioned, or Apple has their own one called Keychain, which is pretty good, or there's some open source ones. There's ones called KeePass, KEE Pass. You can find a whole bunch of ones, and you can make your choice based on maybe the interface or not. But the password for your password manager has to be treated like a national secret. So you might want to literally have that written somewhere and in a vault. Like that's the place where you would want to be making sure that that's super, 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 super safe. So
I also update it regularly as well. That's another thing I do with that master password.
And the reason you end up needing something to manage your passwords is because your passwords should be complex. They shouldn't be something you can just remember, and they shouldn't all be the same. You know, some people just use one word and it's just a word. And you can get sophisticated software that does something called a dictionary attack. It'll run its special thing, and it'll just try like the 10 most common passwords, and it'll just try in ordinary words. And if you haven't put in the annoying uppercase, lowercase, number, symbol, if you haven't made it strong, you know how it says strong when you're making a new password, it would be susceptible to software being able to guess what your password is. So it's very important that they're complicated, and it's very important that they're not the same, which is why you need some way to manage it, because ain't nobody got time to try and remember their complicated passwords. So yes, that is an important reality, and you should do that probably number one because you don't want to forget your passwords, and you most importantly don't want to forget your private keys, which is now bringing it back to cryptocurrency. That's like forgetting which bank you use. Basically, you will not be able to access it again. But I wanted to finish by saying that's not your most risky space when you're operating on your computer. If you're gonna get scammed or robbed in internet security, it's going to be somebody who sends you an email saying something like, hey, you need to update your password, or you need to change your password, and it's going to send you to a link that looks exactly like what you expect it to look like. And unless you look at the URL, that's the little address at the top, and it says exactly what it's supposed to, do not enter any of the information there. And another very important tip is, if you, like I do, and you do, have your own email, like I'm TamarinSheriffs.com, utahzenk.com, quite an important thing is, if I would recommend that the email address that you use for your important things is not a name, a domain that you own.
Okay, tell me about that.
So it's much more easy and likely that somebody can hijack TamarinSheriffs.com and then impersonate me and get access to my other things, like my Gmail or my bank account. Whereas a provider like Gmail, it's almost impossible to impersonate. So if somebody gets hold of TamarinSheriffs.com and they do a password reset on TamarinSheriffs.com, they might send me to a page and it says I need to do a password reset, and it looks like it's my email because it's TamarinSheriffs.com, and I enter my information in there, and then they've got it. Whereas if you use a gmail.com, for example, they'll never be able to look like you're entering the information in gmail.com. So that's such
a good tip. Yeah, I have to slowly start changing that over because I have a lot.
yeah, I use my Gmail. I've got a personal Gmail account. I don't use my TamarineShips.com mail for any of that because it's too susceptible. And the last thing that I'm going to cram in here is that if you aren't using this already on your Gmail or on your Facebook, then you've got to start it immediately, is two-factor authentication. So you often see that as written 2FA. That means there's 2 steps in place to authenticate that it's you. So I try to log in my Gmail, and I'll then get a message via SMS to my phone that I have to give into this browser to authenticate that it's me. And that's very important.
Okay, that's interesting. So I do have 2FA set up on most of my crypto in a different way, though. It's like with the Google Authenticator app.
Yes,
but something I've heard people recommend that I haven't done yet is to have a dedicated email that's just for crypto and that's fully 2FA everywhere. So like, tarzancrypto@gmail.com kind of thing.
I don't know that it needs to be dedicated, but it should definitely be on a provider like Gmail and not your own domain.
Okay. That's a solid tip. Thanks. I thought I was doing so good, but I see that I have some work to do.
Yeah, one small step, and that can be something that you can change over time. And it's just because if it's your own domain, you'll think you're logging into your email account and actually it's phishing.
Right. Yeah. So a workaround though could be, let's say my bank says I get an email. There's a major phishing scam going on right now with Canada Revenue Agency. I get calls all the time. So instead of like talking to them and giving them my CRA everything, I go to the website and start there and like actually use my bookmarked link, because I think there's an issue there too, right? It's like your own. Well, yeah.
Yeah, sure. The only way that you'd still be vulnerable, and this is, like I said, this is much more in the movies than really happens, is that what if somebody puts a key logger on your machine, that means they can see whatever keys you're pressing, you're typing. Then they would be then they can send whatever you type back to themselves. So it is also good hygiene practice. Obviously, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Mac user, which is very unlikely to have any viruses on a Mac. If you're not a Mac user, then you better have really good antivirus software, and you better check it regularly, because if somebody puts a keylogger on your machine, they have access to everything you type, including your passwords.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a very small portion of bad things that happen. The bigger one is that you enter your details in what you think is a legitimate website and you haven't looked carefully at the address.
Yeah, which I find that really reassuring. It seems like the place where we're most vulnerable to attack is like it's like a position we can put ourselves in. So to me, that makes it a lot less scary, because it's not like this is something that could just happen to me that I have to like lay awake at night thinking about at all.
No, you've got a lot of control. If you have conversations with anyone who is very, very clued up about security, they'll say, I mean, I'm going to pull a ridiculous figure, but the majority of any security breaches are human error by far. So you've got the control.
I love it. Cool. Thanks for another great lesson, Tamarin.
You are very welcome.
And we'll be back next week with our Crypto Queen segment.
Absolutely. See you next week.